Okay, everyone, let's begin. This talk will cover some aspects of possible solutions to packaging applications in Python. This is not a technical talk, and I hope not to make you asleep while you're listening. So let me quickly introduce myself. I'm Piotr Banaszkiewicz, a current occupation student. You can recognize me by this nickname on these famous social sites. By the way, if you do not recognize the far right icon, it's Bitbucket. Once again, the middle one was GitHub. So if you're an analytical person, and you should be, you're an engineer, and you're being given a certain problem, first you start by taking this problem apart, or dividing it into sub-problems easier to complete, or categorizing this problem in terms of performance, of possible optimizations, and so on. So what packaging consists of, really? One can say that it's zipping or making a turbo of your application, then distributing it into your clients, to your clients, or to your virtual machines, or to in your data center, whatever. And the final step would be installing that package. But it's actually not true. The packaging problem is a little bit more complex. It looks more like this. So you're first testing your application, then building it, and testing once again if it fails, then zipping or making a turbo, then testing again to make sure that this turbo can be installed or can provide a sane way to upgrade your previous code. Then finally you have to distribute this code and install it. You might wonder why I put sharing and installing in these flowcharts. This is because the solution you choose determines the way you will distribute your code and install it. For example, it's a really easy and small example. If you have bash setup script that simply makes sure your operating system has all the necessary dependencies, like I don't know, database drivers, and maybe ready some web servers, and it will be convenient for you to distribute your code via Fabric or rsync or Git pull. But for some solutions I will present to you, this is not the case. It's easier to distribute them in really similar but other way. So yeah, I've managed to categorize these solutions into 3 groups: the old, the current, and the new ones. And I just want to mention that even if something means old, it doesn't mean really bad. Old means that this solution is quite stable because it was for quite some time used by other people. And something new means it's fresh. It's maybe not innovative, but it's fresh and not as popular as those old solutions. So here we have it. Here we have them. I'll first talk about X, then Buildout, and so on. I personally think that these two are the most interesting ones for you, but they are at the end of the talk. So the old solutions, Python X. What's good to know is that Python X are importables. They are not a packaging format, so it's misused to distribute them with your application. On the positive side, X are good at handling Python binary, aka compiled packages, like simple JSON, which has some speedups in the extension, or MySQL-Python. This is a database driver for Python. but there are some caveats of using X, namely X aren't a packaging standard. Not only they are not a packaging format, but they are also not a packaging standard. They have bad naming conventions, so if you have X, you cannot tell for which Python version it will be used for. And they are tied to the Python interpreter you hatch them with, because they include .pic files, they compiled bytecode files. So as a conclusion, I would say that there are better ways to use for distributing of your project dependencies. If you are forced to, you can use, of course, X, but there is something better, believe me. Next, Buildout. Buildout is, well, it's quite huge, I think, because it does not only manage your dependencies, your Python dependencies, it can also configure them, and it can configure system stuff. For example, you have, I don't know, Apache. I believe Buildout can actually configure Apache for your needs. You need Redis, you need Django. There must be some recipe for your project. But what I find some sort of repulsive is that recipe system. Personally, I can't ever get it. I know that there are some people here who use Buildout successfully. I'm not one of them. So as a conclusion, yeah, what I said. Some people use it, I don't. Yeah, Fabric. I've met some project that uses Fabric as a solution to package their project and to distribute it, but not as a solution for administrators. So these guys were not using Fabric to SSH into some machine and install their code. No, they were actually creating virtual env and pulling in all the dependencies from PyPI or from GitHub. And I just want to say, please don't do that. Fabric is not intended to do such stuff. It's for administrators. It's for many machines, not for local hosts mainly. The same actually could be achieved by using one simple setup, bash setup script, except that it would not require Fabric to be installed on a host machine. And yeah, last one of these old solutions is Python global site packages. So yeah, most Linux distributions have package managers, and they are used successfully, like apt in Debian and Ubuntu, like Yum in CentOS, Red Hat, and so on. And these managers often install Python software into that site packages. It's in /user/include/python 2.7/site packages, and yeah. You should not, unless you know what you're doing, you should not install your own software in there, because you can overwrite something or something can overwrite your software. It might be wrong. You should rethink what you're doing if you're doing so. On the other hand, making your project installable this way is really good, especially for web projects like Django projects. It's really good to make them Python package. So you can put it in your own PyPI server and install them later. It's really good, but not globally. Please don't do that. So we've been in dark ages, and now let's go to the current times. So yeah, virtual env. It's really popular right now. It became kind of standard for Python world. Is there anyone who doesn't know what virtual env is? Great, I don't see any person who raised her hand, her or his. So just in case, I will quite quickly remind you what virtualenv does. It solves a problem of having multiple Python projects simultaneously on your computer. It does so by isolating Python interpreter and installed packages. So virtualenv is really good, and it's so good that it became sort of the standard and even was included in Python 3 point something, the newest branch. So yes, you should be using virtualenv, and every time you use virtualenv, one kitten is thankful and someone takes a photo of it. Next one is Vagrant. I've talked about Vagrant last year here at, no, maybe not here, but at PyCon PL 2012. If you go to vagrantapp.com, which is the main page for Vagrant, you can see some really big names using it: Mozilla, Discuss, O'Reilly, and others, probably even GitHub. But what's so good about Vagrant? Why is everyone using it? Well, basically, Vagrant helps you to install your project on virtual machines. So it's even higher level of isolation than virtualenv. If you want to know more, you can look at my presentation, I think, about Vagrant at speakerdeck.com. But shortly speaking, Vagrant makes virtual machines portable development environments. So this sentence contains two information. First, virtual machines are portable, and second, they are development environments. So you can have, for example, one virtual machine contributed across your work team, and it makes sure that every team member uses the same software, uses the same operating system, and it can actually mirror the target system. I believe today someone in room E was talking about the difference between development environment and production environment, and he said that they started using Vagrant to make sure that development environments is the same as target environment. Vagrant is really helpful, is really good to make that. But as awesome as it is, virtual machines are providing some overhead to CPU and memory, and they are sometimes breaking everything. And I'm looking especially at your Oracle VirtualBox. If you have used it, you might know what I mean. All in all, Vagrant is really helpful and awesome, and you should check it out. Next, system packages. This will take some time because there are some different solutions available. But the general idea is to have your Linux system installing your project from Deb or RPM package, but this package would include virtualenv in it. So you could use some cool features of your distribution, like rollbacks, like ease of configuration with Puppet, with Chef, and so on. You could specify both system dependencies and Python dependencies and build dependencies and runtime dependencies. It's really like a utopia. But virtualenvs are not relocatable. And it makes me really sad. Once again? No, you cannot. Even if someone says you can, you can't. Because virtualenv ---- relocatable or whatever does not make everything like relocatable. There are some binaries you have copied or some links you have to take care of. So yeah, it's really hard to package virtualenvs into RPMs. It's too much effort, too much hackery included. And someone actually made a post It's Alex Hudson, Packaging a Virtual Env, blah, blah, blah. And you should read it. It contains all the information about what's wrong about virtual envs. So to sum up, it's impossible to create generic deb or RPM within virtual env within it. I mean generic, like a deb that installs on every system. But if you know your target system, if you know what libraries will be necessary, what the paths are where you will install your project, you can somehow manage to get your package up and running. It's hard, though. So because creating debs and RPMs is so hard, someone made a software that helps us with it. I'm talking about FPM. It's like a cheap developer. It does what it has to do no matter what. So it does not follow guidelines, does not comply with policies, but it works and gets the job done. Yeah, FPM, if you run it, cannot distinguish between, for example, RPMs for different operating systems like CentOS. CentOS, I believe, has a little bit different architecture for their RPMs than Fedora, for example. Yeah, FPM doesn't care. FPM just creates some debs or RPMs, which will supposedly work. A good person to listen about and read about FPM is Henryk Szlawak. In his blog, there you can see Python application development with native packages. He included many different and interesting opinions about making your project a Linux package. And I think he's right. But yeah, this one is neat. This is actually about 1.5 weeks old. DH Virtual Env was released recently by Spotify. It's a software for Debian packaging toolchain, which builds proper debs and builds them with virtual env inside. So yeah, that utopia I was talking about, it's really taking shape. It has some limitations, mostly regarding paths. For example, if you use it, I believe it installs into /user/local, blah, blah, blah. But yeah, it will change. It might change the world of packaging Python applications, but it's really, really fresh. From first opinions about it, from people like Donald Staff, I believe his name is, they are excited about it and they really like it. So yeah, finally, third part, new solutions. The most interesting one, Python on wheels. Wheels are awesome. It's a new packaging format, and it's, by the way, it's packaging format. It's standardized format. It's totally unlike X. If you would like to see in this format, you can check out PEPs 345 and 376. What is really cool about wheels is that they have standardized names in this format: package version, Python version, ABI, and platform. They can be signed, which is important for security reasons. And installing wheels, just 1 second, it's like totally super fast. Yes? I believe it's an application binary interface, and it will become useful in future. I believe when wheels will be 2.0. It's actually 1 point something, I believe, or 0 point something right now. It's not actually ABI is not used for the moment. I believe we are using every other variable except ABI. So yeah, a working example. Yes. Right now, right. Oh, sorry. I've prepared some examples for you to show how easy it is to use wheels. I would. Oh, just give me a second. So there is some issues with internet connections today. So I've already pulled in some huge project and all of its dependencies, and I've made wheel packages out of it. It was quite simple. All right, here you have about half of the packages. The other rest is higher. You can see probably that these wheels contain, as I said, Python version, package version, package name, architecture. So they will, this, for example, Twisted is compiled, so it works only on my machine on 64 bits. And the same goes for PyCrypto and simple JSON. Yeah. So you can see that wheels are clearly named. You know what you're installing. And well, rename it. I have no idea. We can check though, but yeah, let's check. So as you can see, you cannot install Zop if you rename it. Maybe, let's see again. No, I can install from from a path, I believe. Unless you have to have a simple. I can quickly check if you're right. Do you dare? Yeah, I can hardly see it because the font is too big. Let's just forget about renaming Zope and let me try to run my example, original one. Yeah, there might be some issues with this finding with these wheels, but let's look again. Yeah. Oh yeah, I was specifying the dir that does not exist. So now this is interesting. Oh, that's a shame. I wanted to show you the working example to get some information from what. No, to get it working, you have to use pip. Oh, I remember now. I might not have installed appropriate dependencies because to use wheels, you have to pip install wheel. You have to have setup tools in the newest version. You have to have pip in the newest version in your virtual env. This environment surprisingly, I might not have activated it even. This virtual env has to have these packages in the latest versions. So give me a minute and I will try to make it work finally. I believe I'm not in a virtual env. Well, yeah. I wonder if I can get rid of it because I don't remember what it was called before. And I don't have an internet connection to fix it. Anyone with good eyesight here? Oh yeah, I have MV. Thanks. So let's try again. Did you see that? It took almost 2 seconds to install whole Django, whole everything. The example wasn't working because first I was providing bad argument without S, and second because we renamed Zope. So pip couldn't find Zope and couldn't satisfy the. So that's my working example. Anyway, I hope you saw how quick that one was. Actually, it's only installing, Will's only installing all the files necessary to install. Usually, if you use pip without will, without -- use -will, it first configures, runs setup.py, and yeah, it takes a lot of time. With wills, it's much quicker. Okay. So yeah, I cannot show you how to generate wills from a project because it takes so much time to download Django with this internet connection and other dependencies as well. Anyway, my conclusion is to use wills, and I hope you will have the same conclusion. It really speeds up, it's more secure and future-proof, I would call it. And the last one is Linux containers and Docker. It's really, their internet is buzzing about Docker recently. I even saw one guy who's wearing a Docker shirt today. Victor, right? Yeah. He might be into Docker a little more than me. But what are containers? Well, if you know virtual machines, containers are sort of like virtual machines, but they provide no CPU overhead and no memory overhead. They are isolated Linux processes. They work due to some Linux kernel features. It's, well, really small compared to any virtual machine you would have. And what Docker is? Well, Docker is some sort of a layer put on top of these Linux features I'm talking about. And Docker provides some API to manage this stuff. Pros and cons of using Docker. It's generally a great idea to have a smaller and lightweight virtual machines, but it's always bad there. I've talked recently with Grzesiek from Megi team, and he raised some hand right now. And back then he raised some concerns about using a file system that powers Docker. I don't know anything about that, but his admin, his DevOps, so he must be knowing what he's talking about. And yeah, I've also seen recently that some other gurus from our community said that Docker has a great idea, but it's really full of bugs, and so are Linux containers. So yeah, even it. No, I saw that someone said that Linux containers are bad. I was using Docker and... Okay. I was using Docker and everything worked for me. But yeah, some people might have some troubles with it, especially if they have some edge cases. Their projects are kind of big. So yeah, I talked about what Docker is and what containers are, but how how are they solving our packaging problem? Well, you can build a container that includes your project. So you can write down some comments, some shell comments into a Docker file, and think about Docker file as a make file for Docker, the same as Vagrant file for Vagrant. You can put, for example, apt-get install python-dev, install mysql-python, install IPython, simply whatever you want to do to install on your container. And then you can build that container using Docker and distribute across, I don't know, everything. Yes, Docker, as a matter of fact, recently started working on some various cloud solutions in Rackspace, I believe, and some others. And people really like them, even if there are some bugs. So as a conclusion, go ahead, check it out. Be careful for the bugs, but it may appear that you will like that solution. Okay, thank you for listening. Any questions?
Okay, my question is sort of related. You were talking about what it's about setup tools and distribute. Because some time ago, recently, there was some change that setup tools.07 actually became some wrapper around distribute. Yeah, so I have some old virtual amps that have setup tools 06 something. And upgrading to distribute basically breaks everything, and the virtual amp basically has to be remade from scratch. Have you encountered something like this, or maybe solved it?
I haven't encountered something like that, but you should forget about distribute. There's no more distribute in Python.
You know, I'd love to, but there's some software that has, setup requires distribute in setup.py. So, well, tough luck.
The last version of distribute is somewhat ghost version for those who need distribute installed in their systems, and setup tools merged in distribute recently, I believe in July this year.
If I remember correctly, that was setup tools 07 started not shipping any files at all, but instead became a dependency on, I think it was distribute version of something. But okay, well, it just makes a total mess when you try to upgrade it. So if there is no recipe to fix it, then just don't try it at home. Breaks everything.
Yeah, the easiest solution is to start from scratch, as always. Any other questions?
Hello. You said that pushing code to server just by using Fabric and tar files is not a good idea. But why do you think so? Because adding packaging information like setup.py, manifests, and so on is overhead. And if you are shipping your product, not a package like Django or libs, but your product to server, why do you think you should package it, not just tar and push?
Well, first of all, I want to make sure, I want to state clear that I was not talking about using Fabric is bad for distributing your code or for administrative tasks on many machines. I was talking about using Fabric to make virtual env, to pull in all the dependencies, and it's not on the remote systems, but on the physical computer you're using. For example, if I run this project I talked about on this laptop, Fabric would create a virtual env and would query PyPI for packages that are dependencies of that project I'm talking about. this is not intended. Well, Fabric is intended for administrative tasks. And yes, you can distribute your code with Fabric. I'm sure that there are some other ways. And well, this whole talk is was intended to get you kind of familiar with other solutions there are, because every project might need a little different solution. And yes, you actually shipping tarballs through SSH is totally fine, except it would not scale too much. But yeah, it's totally fine for your project. It might not be good for Google, might not be good for Facebook, but for your project, it's totally fine. Does that answer your question? Yeah, sure. You can reach me here.
Okay, so what I wanted to know is there any way to distribute wheel files, something like repositories and lists of
Oh,
packages
yes.
in a repository?
Yes, I'm using Apache for that. I'm just putting wheels through FTP, some directory that has listing enabled, and Python Python package manager takes care of finding links to that files and everything. You might have seen this option that was troublesome for me. Find links. You can provide an URL here. So, and you can provide a system path as well. The package names are taken from the file names. I don't know about the mechanics under wheel that if they check really, if they're really checking this operating system versions and hardware compatibility. I believe so, because the author of wheel says that you should compile your binary dependencies on every target system you will have to use them. So I believe they are checking this stuff from the file name, or even again from inside of the wheel.
Any other questions?
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you.